Our next guest used to be a personnel guy here at Halas Hall. It's where I believe his scouting career started in Detroit. Then he came here. After he left here in the late 90s, he was the general manager of the Miami Dolphins, and then he moved on for a long career with the Minnesota Vikings, and now does great work in the media. And Rick Spielman as well. This is bonus points. He was on the last national championship team for my Salukis of Southern Illinois.
Yes.
So it's always a pleasure to have a fellow Saluki on the broadcast as Rick Spielman joins us on the CarX Tire and Auto Hotline. Rick, how are you?
Good. No, thanks for having me on this weekend. I know I'm heading up there actually tomorrow to Chicago. I haven't been there in a while for my niece's wedding, Grace Latner, and every Jones in America will be there. It's a giant wedding in downtown Chicago, and like all Chicago families, usually it's a expedition to say the least. So excited to go back and get back in Chicago a little bit and see some family this weekend.
What is your memories, Rick, of being here, getting your career started in the personnel department at Halas Hall?
I worked with Mark Hatley, and as I came up through my career, just learning different ways to do things. And Mark was an excellent personnel man, and I was the pro director at the time. And I have never met Mark Hatley before in my life, and I was at a Blesto meeting, which is the combine meetings in the spring, getting ready for the upcoming fall and the draft. And, teams are trying to figure out what players they have to go, what schools they have to go to scout. And I just happened to be next to Mark. It was actually in the men's bathroom, and he just asked me, hey, while we were washing our hands, do you want to come interview for the pro director's job? Sure, I'll give it a shot. So I went in there, and that's how I ended up in Chicago, but had a great time in Chicago. My wife's family's from Chicago. She grew up in River Forest, so it was great to be back and be part of the family for a while we lived up there. So, but I would say Chicago, there's no better fans, I think, than the Chicago Bears fans as far as passion goes. And, remember, and you guys, Tom, you remember just playing in that old Soldier Field now and driving through like a Coliseum to get to the locker room and stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of tradition there, right on the lake, but it's one of the very privileged to be part of that traditional, iconic franchise.
Now, Rick, we're having Paul Allen on this week, and I'm going on his show
PA,
tomorrow.
my guy.
PA. Now I'm going to play that clip for PA, where you said that the best fans are in Chicago.
Yeah, but I also said you could play this. Minnesota Vikings fans are the most passionate fans when I was there as well. So
nice.
So
PA would take that personally. We all know.
Oh, yes, he would.
Paul would take it personally. Yeah, he would want to.
Oh, my gosh, PA's one of the most sensitive men I've ever met.
That's awesome. Hey, big picture, Rick, is there a right way to build a football team? And the reason I ask you the question is because obviously here in Chicago, some would argue that they build it outside in, that you obviously got the quarterback, but they traded for Keenan Allen, you draft Rome Odunze, and the offensive line many of us thought was average at best at the time. Is there any correct way to build a team, or can you do it in any fashion?
Yeah, I think it depends on the philosophy of the organization. I thought Ryan has done a great job up there putting that team together. I know there are some questions up there on the offensive line, but when you watch them, you got a young quarterback there, and I don't know sometimes if you can blame everything on the offensive line. And I don't know what the calls are, the protections, but there's breakdowns elsewhere besides the offensive line. And sometimes Caleb, as he grows as a young quarterback, and I think he's going to be an excellent quarterback in this league and a top 5 quarterback before it's said and done, but they have to grow. And when you watch him and him holding the ball or him trying to think instead of just going out there playing, but the thing that I think drives most personnel people crazy, and you see it with these college kids all the time, is they scramble around like they were able to get away with at the collegiate level, and you can't do that at the NFL. There's too many great athletes on the other side. So the one thing that was encouraging, it looked like there was some kind of rhythm to the offense against the Packers last week. He used his legs to make plays. He looked more decisive with his decision-making and processing. And I think when I was last year, talking to a lot of people and what Bobby Slowick did down there with C.J. Stroud, and let's just simplify it. Give him 1 to 2 reads, if not, use your legs. Because, they had some struggles on the offensive line as well. And then as they grow and learn a system and become more comfortable in it, to have the answers to all the tests, which I would say this week, you're going to have a lot of answers to the test the way Brian Flores comes after the quarterback. And I'm sure it's going to be very similar, if not more, especially with a rookie quarterback. It'll be interesting to see his Thomas Brown second week with Caleb Williams and some of the answers that they potentially have against a very aggressive defense.
Rick, you were talking about Caleb, and at the end there you said you still believe he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. So I just wanted to make sure that we punctuated that. You believe that there will be a day where Caleb Williams will be in that conversation year in and year out as a top 5 quarterback in the league.
He's too talented of an athlete. He has too talented of an arm. And you have to go through these growing pains, as hard as that can be. But I honestly believe with the physical abilities that he has, with the ability to make off-schedule plays, I mean, if you go back to that game in London, I mean, it was lights out. And I thought he's getting ready to really take off. And then they went into a bye, and then something, they haven't won a game since coming out of the bye. But you see the flashes. Now it's just a matter of giving him time, letting him learn and grow. And I do believe he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in this league.
Yeah, Rick, usually growing pains don't include having to replace your offensive coordinator. How much does a change like that disrupt the growth of a young quarterback? Or could it, if it's done in a positive way or it was more than necessary, could it spur that growth along?
Well, the thing that will be interesting to watch this weekend is that Thomas Brown called his first game as the Chicago Bears offensive coordinator last week. So I don't know if Green Bay had any kind of beat on what that game plan was going to look like and what were the tweaks to the offense that Thomas Brown put in. But it seemed like a lot of the things that he adjusted. You can't throw out a whole scheme, as you know, Tom, and just throw it away and then let's say, hey, we're going to put in this scheme now. You just tweak some things, and those tweaks seem to work. Now that there is game film on that, and you got an idea of what Thomas Brown is going to do with Caleb, is it going to be the same thing as you've seen against Green Bay? But at least there's some film out there on Thomas Brown's first game as an offensive coordinator. So I'm sure that Minnesota has really studied that and found out what the subtle differences is, and be interested to see what happens this weekend.
Yeah, one of the tweaks was they put the read option back into the game plan, and you saw Caleb made some plays with his feet, and they took advantage of an aggressive front seven of Green Bay. Now it's on film. As a former defensive player, how would you then go about trying to take what Caleb has done with his legs last week away from them and eliminate that element from the Bears' attack?
Well, you're using that term loosely, former defensive player. I'm going to say my brother was a lot better football player. Not as good looking as me, but a lot better football player.
I like you more than your brother, because your brother used to beat my ass.
Yeah, I was born with the jaw on the hair, and he was born with a change of direction. So everybody has a strength and weakness in life. But no, it'll be interesting to see because you know that he's a good athlete. I think he does and has the ability to make plays with his legs. But I know this is not the first time Brian Flores has gone against a quarterback that could potentially beat you with his legs if he uses his legs. So I'm sure they'll come up with something. But the one thing that I know, let's say they go in and they're not worried about him because they don't know if he'll do the same thing again this week. But if he starts to hurt him with their legs, then I know Brian Flores is very good at adjusting to try to take that away if it starts to hurt them during the game.
Rick Spielman joining us. It's Waddle and Silvy on ESPN 1000. You were a part, I believe, of the search committee with the Commanders to help them find a general manager. Then ultimately, I believe he hired the head coach. If you were to compose a list right now, Rick, and you were a general manager actively now, who would be on your short list as far as a head coaching candidate? What would be your 3 or 5 names that you would start your list with?
Well, the number one names on the list is, everybody wants that offensive-minded guy, which I think you could make a mistake doing that. But the hottest name is going to be Ben Johnson and what he's done, with the Detroit Lions and how explosive that offense is. So, he's going to be out there on the list. I think Joe Brady up in Buffalo, with him taking over as the OC halfway through last year, and everybody pretty much said there was going to be a rebuild up in Buffalo, but what he's done with Josh Allen and how they're playing right now and beating Kansas City, they may be the team to beat in the AFC. So if you kind of trend towards hot offensive coordinators, but to me, you can't narrow the search just to that. To me, it comes down to, is there a coach out there that can lead a group of men and can put together a great staff? Because leadership is number one. And when my brother was involved with the coaching search up in Detroit, Dan Campbell wasn't an offensive guru coach that worked with quarterbacks, but he put together an unbelievable staff. And they slowly built that roster up, and their philosophy was to build it through the draft and then implement some free agents here or there. So there's going to be a lot of hot names out there. I had, sat through 6 or 7 coaches last year in that interview process, and there's a lot of very young, very impressive coaches out there. But it comes down to what the team or what the owner, to be honest with you, what the owner wants and what the owner is looking for. And I know when we went, everybody wanted Ben Johnson last year. Well, he didn't leave. But Dan Quinn was the right person for the culture in that locker room and all the changes in the new ownership and the new general manager. And the one thing that I told them was that I can give you my opinion on who the coach is. And I was working with Adam Peters once. Josh Harris hired Adam Peters. But you have to make that determination on who works best with you and your personality, because my personality may be different. It's like my wife may not be for anyone else, but someone else's wife may not be for me. So you try to get that marriage or whatever that is, where those guys are going to be able to work cohesive and collective to come up with the best decisions for the organization. And if you limit it to just one particular category, I think that's where you see people make mistakes.
And I think it's a perfect place. You led me exactly where I wanted to go with the personality, because and I've covered the team since you were here, Rick, where there's been talk that ownership here hasn't loved that alpha male that Mike Ditka was, even though that he was the last coach to win a Super Bowl, that they have hired a bunch of guys who would be good to live on your cul-de-sac and would be great neighbors, but haven't been winning coaches. You know what I mean? So like a guy like Vrabel, for instance, or like last year Harbaugh would have turned them off. What would you say if an ownership would not want a guy like that, especially when this team's right now, the Bears, seem to have let one game against that Commanders team that you advised go down the drain this year?
Yeah, I don't think there is one particular personality that wins, because they're all shapes and sizes. Andy Reid, I don't know if you call him Mike Vrabel or a Dan Campbell type personality, but he's a brilliant coach, and he's a future Hall of Famer. But he's not a guy that's breathing snot out of his nose every day when he comes to work. He's more on that other side. So to me, it goes back to what you're looking for, but you better find the leader, because to me, that is the number one thing, because those players are going to be looking up to that guy. And I always was curious, when you put whoever that new head coach is in front of the team meeting for the first time, what's the impression of that team's going to be? But those guys are going to have to buy into what that coach is selling, and they're going to have to believe in them. And Tom, as well, if you put together a coaching staff and the players believe that they are going to put you in the best position to win or come up with the best schematic thing to win each week, even though it may be different, you're going to follow that guy. Or if that coach is going to make you a better football player, regardless of how many Pro Bowls there are. I asked my brother, what's a good coach? He said, well, players can sift through the BS pretty easy. If that coach, no matter if I went to the Pro Bowl or not, is going to make me a better player, I will follow him to the edge of the cliff, and he tells me to jump, I'll jump because I believe in him. But the players also can smell the BS. And if they don't believe that coach is giving them the best opportunity to win on Sundays, then they're going to go find someone else that will.
Rick, do you think Brian Flores will get an opportunity to be the head coach of a football team sooner rather than later?
I don't know, because I don't know from an ownership standpoint with all, the legal matters that are out there, and by no means am I an expert in any of that area or have any knowledge of that. I do believe that he is a really good football coach. I do believe that, what he's done defensively, do I think, and just like you guys, you read all the clips out there all the time, right? And, how he handled the Tua situation. And, it sounded like he was humbled by that and grew from that. Guys, sometimes with their first opportunity and they make mistakes, hopefully they grow from that and become better because of the mistakes they made. But I can't tell you what coaches or what owners are going to think of Brian Flores, but I do think he's a really good football coach. And I do think that how he's gotten those players to buy into his system tells me he's got to have pretty good leadership as well.
Yeah. Rick, you worked with Kevin Warren in Minnesota, and he was in a different role than he is now as team president here. But knowing his personality, do you believe he'll want to be involved if there is a coaching search with Ryan Poles, or will he be hands-off?
Well, I would tell you this. It would be a mistake not to have him involved because of Kevin's experience in the NFL, not only, some of his background back with the St. Louis Rams and working with Dick Vermeil. He got a guy that was a Big Ten commissioner. You have a guy that has vast knowledge of a lot of things. And I think that the Bears, I think Coach Eberflus is a very good coach, and I hate to see anyone lose their jobs, to be honest with you. But if they do decide to go that, I think you're making a mistake if Kevin Warren's not involved in the process.
Interesting.
Rick, great stuff. It was awesome catching up with you. You're great at what you're doing right now, and we wish you all the best going forward.
Yeah, and enjoy your trip back to Chicago as well.
Yes, congrats.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm going to get a pizza or a hot dog, because I live down here, retired in Sanibel, Florida, on an island. And, the hurricanes come through there. We're like 3 miles off. We're a barrier island, so I just look at us as like a sandbag to stop the waves coming over into the mainland because we've gotten wiped out so much down there. But, I'm looking for some really good food when I get back up there this weekend.
We'll send you a place to go, too. We'll send you to Chicago Cut. Have you been to Chicago Cut yet?
No, I have not.
All right, we'll send you information on that. We'll have Tyler, our producer, hook you up, all right?
Okay, is it like, are you paying for it, or am I going to have to pay for it? And I'm just like, hey.
We'll make our producer pay for it.
Yeah. You're a big-time general manager. What, are you looking for freebies?
Yeah. I'm just, I'll give you a 10% discount.
There you go.
Discount if you go there.
Perfect.